Command those who are rich in this present world, everybody shout rich, in this present world, not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Next scripture. Command them to do good. Shout, do good. To be rich. You see it right there. Everybody shout, be rich. To be rich in good deeds and to be generous. There's that word right there. Extravagant, unconditional generosity. To be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves in Wells Fargo. Oh, it doesn't say that. I'm sorry. As a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life, listen, that is truly life. Shout amen. Amen. Please be seated. Tell somebody close to you. Tell them you're richer than you think. Tell them. And the person is thinking right now, you haven't seen my checkbook. I don't know what's up with that. All right, here's the big idea. The big idea is that most of us, and I say most of us because we're living in Silicon Valley, the most expensive place to live anywhere in the world, one of the most expensive places to live, and that there are really people who live here, who are living in garages, and their backs are totally up against the wall, economically speaking. And some of them are here, and some of you are here. Look, I would say that the most of us, however, here's an announcement. You didn't know this before you came in here. You're rich. You see that silence in response? I didn't get one amen on that. It's like, what did he say? Let me try it again. You're rich. Amen. Thank you. Now, here's the deal. Here's why I got such a room full of salads. All right, here's the deal. Here's why I was so salad, right? It was so salad because, number one, so first of all, you are rich. But in general, we don't do rich well because most of us didn't even know we were rich until a few moments ago. And as Americans, here's a statistic about Americans. The wealthier we become, the less we give. We don't do rich well. Silicon Valley is one of the wealthiest places in the world, and it has one of the lowest philanthropic rates of anywhere. Right here. The wealthier, the richer I become, the less we tend to give. We don't do well. Now, Andy Stanley, who really helped to give birth to this whole Be Rich effort that's now happening all over the country, essentially says that there are some side effects to being rich. And if you was to take the passage that I just read, begins with the word, command those that are rich. If you look at the New Living Translation, it begins by saying, teach those that are rich. Essentially, the meaning is how to be rich. Those that are rich in this life, how to be rich. So that's what I'm doing. Let's do a little teaching to us about how to be rich. And we're going to practice it together in 4 weeks from now. And the first thing is side effects. So the first side effect we have is denial often. Everybody say denial. All right. Here's how it manifests itself. The Gallup poll a few years ago did a survey of a set of Americans, and they asked the question, what is the income level of someone who's rich? And they averaged the answer to be $150,000. Now, here's the challenge, especially for those who live here in Silicon Valley. If you go to the average person who is earning $150,000 or less, and you say, are you rich? Their answer would probably be no. Absolutely. People who made $30,000, they earned $30,000, they were asked in the same Gallup poll, what's the definition of rich? They said someone earning $75,000 they thought was rich, would be rich. And so the problem is if you go to that person who earns $75,000 and you say, are you rich? They will probably say, no, absolutely not. They would say, of course not. All right? And Money Magazine published an article recently, and they set the wealth index of in the United States in terms of the income level to be wealthy. They set it at $5 million. All right. Now, here's the deal. What that means is if you go to someone who has earned $4 million and ask them, are you rich? The answer probably is no, or 3 million, or 2 million, or 1 million. So part of the challenge is that, rich is a moving target, the definition of, and it's just easy for us to kind of deny it, if you will. Basically, the statement is, I'm not rich. You might be rich, but I'm not rich. Now, let me give you the statistic that reflects our reality. The global wealth list, global rich list, which is a presentation, says this, that if you earn $32,000 a year, you live in the top 1% of the wealthiest wage earners in the world. You can go ahead and say it. Wow. And the other thing is like, that can't be true. Right? But that's what they say. You know why? Because in a world of 7 billion people, billions of people make less than $1 a day. They live in poverty, make less than $1 a day all over the world. And even if you are economically stretched, because you live in America, you can go to the hospital down the street if you get sick and go to the emergency room, and they have to take care of you, and you get world-class medicine. You get world-class health care. Or because you live in America, you can go to public school. And the worst public school is far better than no school that exists in many countries around the world where there is no public education or folk have to walk 20, 30 miles to get there every day. Tell somebody you're richer than you think. Or we have Medicaid, and we have Medicare, and we have food stamps, and we have homeless shelters. Many places around the world just doesn't exist. By virtue of living in America. America is the only place where you can live in the projects and have cable. In 2 rooms, all right? With big screen TV you just got from Costco. All right, so. Somebody say amen. Amen. You're richer than you think. Now, here's the deal. We don't feel rich. That's the issue. We don't feel rich. We don't feel rich. And the reason we don't feel rich is 2 reasons. Number 1, we don't feel rich because many of us, this is how it goes. The more I have, the more I think I need. That's it. The more I have, the more I think I need. Now, I grew up in Coachella, Louisiana, in a small house. I just went back and saw it about a year ago. I was amazed by it. It had to be something like 400 square feet. That's literally. It had to be around 400 square feet. And when I was growing up in that house, it never dawned on me to wish that I was in a bigger house. It felt like it was just right. I now live in a condo that is about 1,200 square feet. And almost every day that I wake up, I go, I need more space. All this stuff, where I'm going to put all this stuff. You see? The more I have, the more I think I need. The second reason why we don't often feel rich, in the text of Paul is saying, Timothy, you've got to teach those who are rich in this life how to be rich. That's what Paul says in the text. Okay, that's what we're doing. The second reason why we don't necessarily feel that we're rich is because most of us don't have financial margin. It connects with our series previously, margin. Now, let me give you a good picture of what financial margin looks like. And when I was 14 years old, I got my first really, really solid job. And that was hauling pulpwood. Back in the South, you're hauling pulpwood. That means you get on a truck, you go out into the woods, you cut down all the trees, middle of summer, it's about 100 degrees, chop them up, throw it on the truck, take them back to the sawmill, and turn it into wood products. At the end of my first week, Mr. Willie Logan called me. I was part of his crew. Called me and said, "Come here, Herman." And they didn't pay with checks. It's all cash. So he pulled out this big roll of cash. He'd just gotten paid from the sawmill. He pulled it off. He said, "Put your hand out there." Put my hand out there. He went 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120. He said, "That's yours." I looked at it and I went, "I'm rich." I was so excited. I mean, like, I had never had that much money before. This is a bomb. And the reason why I was rich is because I had margin. Let me tell you why I had margin. I had margin because I'm 14 years old, so obviously I'm staying at home, right? So I had no mortgage to pay. I had no rent to pay. I had no utilities to pay. I had no health insurance to pay. I had no car note to pay. I had no car insurance to pay. I didn't have to pay for any kind of groceries. I mean, the definition of margin is having more money than bills, right? Or having what you have is more than what you need. And what I had $120 of margin. All right, so the moral of the story, if you want to have margin, it means you have to move to Coachella, Louisiana, and move in with your parents. The reason why we don't have margin or much margin is because as a habit, we generally spend everything that comes in. Actually, more accurately, it's already spent before we cash our checks. And that's driven more often than not by this notion that the more I have, the more I think I need. Now, there's three ways to increase margin. One, Paul is saying, teach those who are rich in this life how to be rich. There's three ways. One, you can reduce spending. Two, you can increase income. Three, you can increase savings. Most of us would not consider one, reduce spending. Of course not. It's like the more I have, the more I need. So what does that mean? Mostly we choose number two, to increase income. So oftentimes we're driven to take on 2 jobs or 3 jobs, that we're working harder to get that extra promotion. Now, there are some people just out of economic reality in Silicon Valley, it's just your reality. But for many of us, it's about having more because we feel like we need more. And the problem is when we take on a second job or a third job, it means in pursuit of financial margin, it means we have less time margin, less margin in our relationships. We're spending less time with people that we care for, trying to get ahead. See the point? What we should do, if possible, reduce spending. But I have more, I think I need more. Denial. The second is kind of side effect is that drives this lack of margin, discontentment. We generally are just discontented. Another way of saying it is, we here in America have an upgrade mentality. We want the We want the newest, the better, the newest, the best, the fastest. Always. We want it. We need it. Got to have it. All right. Just in case you haven't been convinced that you're rich, let me give you an example. You can finish this sentence out. You know you're rich when you go into your bedroom, your closet, you open your closet, it's packed with clothes, and you step back and you say, I can't. You're rich. I mean, that place is packed with work clothes and dress clothes and workout clothes, and you're standing there scratching, I can't find anything to wear. And then here's what we call generosity. Generosity is, in order to make room for new clothes, we get a whole lot of clothes that we've worn several times, 3 or 4 times, whatever the case might be, and we give it away. Now, we call that being generous. Listen, that's a nice thing that you did to give it away, but that should not be your definition of generosity. Giving other people stuff you don't want. That's how rich folk do. Like us. All right, let me give you another example. This is an iPad. That's how you know you're rich. This is an iPad. It's not charged, so I can't turn it on. But if I could turn it on, this is a second generation. It belongs to me. Second generation iPad. I think 3 other iPads have come out since then. I've ignored all of them until this iPad that's coming out in a couple of weeks. Ooh, let me tell you. When I turn this thing on, it takes about 5 seconds to come on. The new iPad, not to mention the pencil that comes with it. The new iPad, when you turn it on, it's like 1 second. Boom! Because I have to confess, I've got an upgrade mentality, right? Here I am willing to pay hundreds of dollars. I have an iPad that works. It's not broken. But the new one, it opens in a second. So the difference between 1 second and 5 seconds. You see the point? Did I tell you guys about the new Apple TV? Oh my God, this is a bomb. Have y'all seen that? I'm serious. But I'm preaching to me. I say, listen, this is great. I have an Apple TV. I got it for $99. Had it for the last 2 years. It's awesome. But the new one, it's going to come out in a few weeks. I've been tracking it. It has a little mic, and it has Siri built into it. And you say, bring up that movie, stop that, show me this, and choo, 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 choo. For only $145. That's a portion of somebody's rent. You see the difference? Shout upgrade. You have something that works perfectly. But just because it's not the newest. See, rich people get to make those kind of decisions. Rich people. Tell somebody you're richer than you think. So this notion of being discontented. So on the one hand, listen, the more I have, the more I think I need. And secondly, the more I have, the more I want. Because we have that appetite for stuff. And the more you feed that appetite for stuff, the bigger the appetite becomes. You see? And it drives the more I have, the more I want. And that gets in the way of your being positioned to be used by God as an instrument of generosity that is unconditional and extravagant. Now, Paul says in this passage, as we're looking at, he says, look, not only teach those who are rich how to be rich, right? And he says, and so I just talked about some of the side effects, but he says, look, there's some risk that comes with being rich. Tell them this. All right, so here's the first risk he identifies. The first risk he identifies, he says, teach them not to be arrogant. Here's his point, that there is a tendency that the richer we become, we have a tendency to develop a mentality of superiority. That if I drive a certain car and I live in a certain neighborhood, and if I'm able to dress a certain way, that I have a tendency, not all wealthy people. I know some wealthy people that this does not fit, but I know some almost wealthy people, this is exactly them. That I have a tendency to look down on folk who I drive, who catch the bus. I look down on folk who live in a certain neighborhood. To look down on folk who didn't get the kind of education that I got. This notion of superiority, this notion that somehow, because you're richer and you've acquired more, you're better than other folks. You're like, I work this hard. How come they can't work this hard? Forget all the structural stuff of economic challenges. Oh. Paul says, teach them, don't be arrogant. Because even if you created a startup that became a multi-million-dollar deal that you sold, you can't really do anything but give God thanks for grace, because at the end of the day, who gave you that mind? At the end of the day, who allowed you to be born in a certain set of circumstances so that you have the opportunity to go to the educational facility that you did? Who blessed you with those gifts? How is it that you have those gifts and you're not born with special needs? And folk who have special needs, they have their own set of gifts. And so this is a product of grace. So the richer you become, the more grateful you ought to be, and the more humble. Because it's never about you. It's always about what God wants to do with you and through you. And then there's another portion that comes with this arrogance piece. Paul says, teach them, don't be arrogant. Tell them, don't be arrogant. And I call this entitlement. Everybody say entitlement. And the best way for me to explain it is this. Rich folk, I'm talking about people who are able to trade in one very good working Apple TV for another one. The person who stands in front of a closet full of clothes and says, I can't find anything. You know, rich people, we have a tendency of raising entitled children. Let me give you an example. Not long ago, I took my daughter and my nephews to Sky High. Sky High is a place where you go with these trampolines. So I took them, and Rhonda and I went and did, everybody's on the trampolines. I was there for about 20 minutes, and it was over. But the rest of them, they just kept doing their thing. Then they took a break. Of course, they all wore out. And so we had to go and we had to get some Slurpees and all that stuff. So I had to spend that money and then go back. And then they jump some more and they come back. Now they're starving. So we had to go buy some pizza from the place and all that. And I had to spend that money. And then they go back and then they come back. And, they got these little games there. And then okay. I'm physically wore out. I'm financially wore out. When we're going to leave. All right, so they're playing the little games and all this kind of stuff, right? I said, so finally, it's time to go home. Thank the Lord. All right, so we load everybody up in the van. And before, put your seatbelts on. Yes, all right. Before I can pull out, somebody says, Daddy or Uncle, can we go? And you want to interrupt and say, you mean home? No, they got this kind of stuff here, right? And then there's but can we have some? And my natural instinct was to say, jobs? You mean jobs? I just spent all this money on you. You got the nerve to ask me for something else? Really? This my money. I had to work for this money. You're not entitled to it. All right, some of these high schoolers here, middle schoolers, get this. You arguing with your mama. I need to have your money to get these $200 tennis shoes. No, you don't. If you needed that bag, go get a job, baby. Pay for it. Shout entitled. People who are really poor, their kids are not entitled. They're grateful. They wake up with gratitude. Entitlement. Paul says, be careful. Don't become arrogant. But let your life be defined by humility and gratitude. And then lastly, the last point that he says in terms of the risk. So one risk is you might become arrogant. Be careful. The richer you become. Another is don't put your trust in your wealth. That's what he says. He says, teach them, do not be arrogant and do not put their trust in wealth. He then adds, which is so uncertain. All right, there's a proverb that I like to use at this point, this wonderful passage, Proverbs chapter 18, verse 11. It essentially says, it's great. It says, it's talking about it says, the rich think of their wealth as a strong defense. They imagine it to be a high wall of safety. So this is the notion. The more I accumulate, the more I accumulate, the more money I get, the more money I get, the more money I get, the safer I am, the more I can secure my future. And it's kind of like a big wall that I hide behind, and I gather everything so that I can secure myself. And what Paul is saying is, I don't care how much you accumulate, you cannot guarantee security. All right, let me ask. Let's flip the question here. Ask this question right here, right? How much money? I just said, but just listen to me. How much money do you think, or at least when you came in here, how much money did you think you would need in order to have a secure future? In order for it to be enough? I'll take a few moments and think about it. It's that Jeopardy sound you hear. Dun, 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 dun. All right, stop. Okay, listening by video. Everybody, okay, I could just walk through here. I could tell every one of you, I know your answer. I know exactly your answer. Here's your answer. You need more than what you have now. That's it. That's the point, right? Someone said John B. Giddens, one of the wealthiest people in the world, they asked him how much is enough? He said, $1 more. It's always $1 more. $1 more. $1 more. Getty. This notion that I always need more. I need more. Why? You can't do it. Let me flip it. The scripture says this. The scripture says this. Jesus says that God and money are competing for your heart. Here's how Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6. He says, listen, you can't serve both God and mammon, or God and money, or God and materialism. That's all that word mammon translates to that, right? It says you can't do both. You will either love the one and despise the other, or you'll cling to the one and hate the other. But you got to choose. You can't serve both, is what he says. So how do you know whether you've slipped into serving money more than you're serving, or trusting money more than you trust God? Well, here's a couple of tests for you. Here's one. Those who are trusting God more than money, in general, here's how they think about money and people. They use money and they serve people. Those who kind of slip into trusting money more than God, anything else, here's one of the ways that expresses itself. They serve money and use people. See the difference? Let me give you a test question. Let me give you a test. Which one of these make you feel the most insecure? There is no God. There's no money. No God, no money in my bank account. Which one? Well, let's reframe the question. If you had only 2 hours to live, which one would make you feel the most insecure? No heaven, no money. You see, most of us, when you think about that question, most of us, do we want to be in a position so that at the end of life, so Paul is saying, don't trust in money. He says, put your trust in God. And what he's saying is, most of us at the end of life, we want to be able to trust God at the end of our lives. Well, listen, if you want to trust him at the end of your life, why don't you trust him in the middle of your life? And here's even a broader point than this. While you are trusting provisions, Paul says it is much more wise to put your trust not in the provisions, but in the provider. That's what Paul means when he says, teach them, do not be arrogant and do not trust in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to trust in God, who richly gives us everything we have to enjoy. He is the provider. Provider. Trust in the provider. Stock markets crash, earthquakes come, the economy falls apart. You can't secure yourself against that. But if he has the last word, disease and sickness, you can't say, but if he has the last word, tell somebody, trust in God. All right, here I'm at the end now. Let me finish this. Let's try to wrap this up. Here's why I'm spending so much time on this. Listen to me. I started off by telling you about this radical love that expresses itself, that comes from a God that gives us a generosity that is extravagant with no strings attached. And if, in fact, I'm really captured by that love, by that generosity, it positions me to become a partner with God in the world. And that God expects me to be generous, extravagantly, and without strings attached, and that I'm part of God's plan to be a blessing to others who are in need. But if because I'm rich, I'm so focused on the next iPad, because I'm rich, I'm so focused on bringing in new clothes into my closet, because I'm rich, I'm so focused on the next Apple TV, and I have no financial margin, that it squeezes my heart in such a way that the only thing I can really think about is me and my bills and my dreams, and I can walk by struggling people and poor people and hurting people and folk who are in need, and I can't even see them because I'm so wrapped up in my own stuff. So if you're exercising the faith in Jesus that he invites us to, the reason why he stopped those two guys and said, turn around and go be baptized, then you've got to allow him to be at work in your heart. It's not your circumstances ultimately, it's your heart, so he can set you free and begin to help you to think about this stuff differently. So that's what we're going to do next week. I'm going to come back next week and bring folk you think you need to hear this, because I'm going to talk about the how. How? Okay, you've nailed my situation, Pastor. Okay, how do I change? How does God help me? How does my relationship, what do I need? Give me some, how do I change? Next week. All right, next week. All right, now let me see your card. Show me your card. All right, under where it says response to the message, here's what I pray you will write. And here's what I pray you will do over the course of the week, because prayer opens us up to the powerful move of God in our lives. Here's what I pray you will write it and do it. Here's what I'm hoping you will write. I will pray about being rich God's way. So this week, you don't have to write this week, but you know that's what it is. This week, you're going to spend some time praying, God, I want to learn. I want you to work in my heart. I want to be rich, since most of us are already rich. I want to learn how to be rich your way. I'll see you next week.